The Centers for Spiritual Living Diversity Inclusion Commission welcomes you to They Are Here, Affirming the Gender Non-Binary Experience, Part 1, with our presenter, Reverend Champion Fleming.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sheila Alexander Reed. I'm a member of the Diversity Inclusion Commission and a member of CSLDC here in Washington, D.C. I live off of 16th Street, just about a mile away from the People's House. And I'd like to welcome you to They Are Here. Just in case you didn't understand, and you will shortly, but they refer to pronouns as some non-binary folks use to identify themselves. Before we go into that, however, let me share my pronouns. They are she, her, hers. And you'll understand the importance of why I shared my pronouns as the night goes on. And we look forward to you all sharing yours. If you'd like to, where your name is, you can click the three buttons next to your name and hit rename, and you can add in your pronouns as well. Let's all do it together, shall we? Go to participants, find your name, click on more, hit rename, and then just put in your pronouns, she, her, hers, and click rename, bam. That was our first interactive exercise. Thank you. We're off to a great start. So again, I'm Sheila Alexander Reed, and I am sort of your host for the evening. But before we get started, we're going to have a centering prayer to kick off this amazing event. And then I'll be right back to give you a little more details about what we have in store for you. Is Sunshine in the house with us?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, thank you, beloved.
Thank you.
So the invitation is to simply close your eyes if you're comfortable, or to cast your gaze upon something inspirational. As I simply speak a word now, bringing to mind the one power, one presence, one life that has created everything out of itself. And it too goes by, call it life, spirit, the great reality. And what I know is that this great reality has created everything out of itself. Therefore, my life is its life. And that which is true of this great reality, of this life, of this spirit, is true for me. That the love, the joy, the peace, the power, the abundance, the clarity, and the full expression of this great reality, I am. And as I know this is my truth, I know that this is the truth for each and every one of us. And the joyous variety and difference, and the joyous multiple unlimited ways that each one expresses as this great reality, as this spirit, as this life, as the life of God. And so I bless our time together. I name it good and very good, knowing that we use this time not only for our own edification, but that we might understand, that we might join in, that we might be full of our own self-expression and welcome the self and the full expression of all. That we might indeed create a love-minded community and celebrate the diversity and the difference, the variety. So I give thanks for our time, and I allow these times to simply flow so that we indeed can continue to create a world that works for everyone as we awaken to our own spiritual magnificence and awaken others to their spiritual magnificence. For this and so much more, I give thanks. I let it be so, and so it is.
And so it is.
And so it is. Thank you, Sunshine. Thank you. That's the way you kick it off. So, folks, tonight you're going to learn some terms. You're going to hear some definitions. But most importantly, you will get a sense of what it is like to be othered. sometimes even within your own spiritual center, a place that, we like to think is safe and sacred. It's not so important that you remember the terms or definitions. There's not going to be a test. I want you to leave with a sense of compassion for people who are harassed, bullied, and discriminated against just because they've chosen to be authentic. At the end of the day, nobody chooses to be non-binary if that's not how they identify. You may think it's trendy because you've heard it as, maybe a buzzword, but trust me, it's not something that choice that people take lightly. Among the LGBTQ community, non-binary and transgender people, I will say, have the hardest time being accepted by mainstream society, and sometimes by the rest of those letters in the LGBTQ AI plus community. The L, the G, and the B, I think have been accepted for the most part, but I'll say the T and the Q, and many non-binary consider themselves as queer, have the hardest time. They have the highest rates of attempted suicide, sexual assault, harassment by police, sometimes by their employers, and by society, really because people just don't understand what it means to be non-binary or to be different. Unfortunately, we live in a society that demonizes those that are different when we don't understand other people. And so tonight and tomorrow night, it's all about breaking barriers, reaching across the aisle to meet folks that are different from you. So I encourage you just to be open and take in all that we have to offer. And I guarantee you, you'll be happy you did. Thank you and enjoy.
Thank you, Sheila. Yeah. I want to thank the Diversity Inclusion Commission, especially.
Let me tell them who you are, folks. That's Champion Fleming.
Just a second. I'll get there.
Okay.
First, I want to start with gratitude.
Yes.
For the commission for allowing these 2 nights to take place, for all the tech support, emotional support, other support, and for just being the commission who keeps keeping it real in our communities. My name is Champion Fleming. I'm recently Reverend Champion. I was licensed in early September with a group of COVID, the COVID special. We did our panels by Zoom. I'm in Oakland, California, which is the unceded ancestral territory of the Chochenyo Ohlone people. The Chochenyo Ohlone are part of a group of what are called the Ohlone folks, and they have 8 different languages, and they span from the southern part of the San Francisco Bay to up above the San Francisco Bay, and they were 8 different distinct groups with different languages, and they were completely homogenized when they were rounded up to build the mission system, and lost their language and lost their history. So Ohlone is actually a name that they've accepted, but it's more of a colonizer's name. And they do really identify by their language. So in the Bay, right in my neighborhood are the Chochenyo and also the Muwekma Ohlone. They continue to fight and strive for liberation of their land. And you can actually, in Oakland, you can actually pay rent on your land. And I know that last month, Reverend Victoria did a really great Indigenous Peoples webinar where she asked people to go to the nativeland.ca website and check out who the people were that occupied the land before we occupied this land. I think it's important that we really humanize those folks and breathe the breath that they breathed and think about how they walked the earth, and how we're walking that same earth now. So we honor and uplift the custody and the guardianship they've taken over the land. And also in this community, I like to uplift their ancient wisdom, knowing that the ancient wisdom of the indigenous people of the United States is absolutely woven into science of mind philosophy. We don't necessarily see it or call it out, but it is there. And so just taking a moment to honor and acknowledge the people and the land. So it's great folks are putting in the chat the acknowledging the land where they are. So we have many hours of content to deliver to you in about 90 minutes. So we've tried to build in some places where you get to ask questions and engage with each other, and and we'll do some of that. So hold on. I know I get so excited. I just like to pour out what I know. So I identify as gender expansive, and outside of the gender binary, beyond the binary. And as we roll through tonight, you'll see that those of us who identify outside the binary are very different, very come to it in different ways, identify in different ways. It's different culturally too, whether you are white or African American or Latinx. You probably have different terms and language. You probably feel differently just because of how gender is in your culture. So here we go. Rafe, can you put up this poll? We wanted to just kind of do a litmus and see, you know, who, I think, is it still up for folks? Are people seeing the poll? Okay. So go ahead and answer that. And once we get almost all the participants answering, Rafe's going to publish that so we can see where we stand. If this is kind of new information or... And I also want to acknowledge that both Z and I are here tonight, and we look kind of alike. And in fact, we were born on the same day. We're birthday twins, but a few years apart. And that actually non-binary folks are much more diverse than just what you're seeing with us.
And they're not all born on October 6th.
That's right. Is that able to publish? Oh, sorry, you're muted.
We're at 88% right now. So do you want me to go ahead and end it or keep it going?
So if you see the poll and you haven't answered the poll, you could answer that poll and then Rafe is going to publish it for us.
%. We're getting there.
Oh.
I feel like I'm being transported back a couple of weeks in time.
But did we get the results from Georgia yet?
Yes. Twice.
I don't know. It doesn't tell me who. It just tells me a percentage tonight.
I say go ahead and publish it.
All right. So here we go at 93%. I got to end it and then we'll publish it. So.
Okay.
All right, share the results. Here we go.
Do you know anyone who is non-binary? Yes, that's great. Awesome.
So you guys can see all that, right? I have no idea what you're looking at.
We're looking at the results, which
Awesome.
says 70% yes, 23% no, 35% in my community, 17% in my family, and 12% I identify as non-binary. Awesome.
All right, we done with this?
Yeah.
All right, it's going bye-bye. There we go.
Thanks, Rafe.
Sure.
Um, so what we're hoping tonight is that we can just seek and gain more understanding of the experience of identifying outside the gender binary and actually what that means. And as we know, we're most of our communities identify as open and accepting, radically inclusive, you know, all kinds of stuff that we have really high rates of gay people in our centers, and we want to create a sense of belonging and welcoming. And one of the ways we do that is by understanding how people identify and what makes them feel connected and part of the group, part of the family, part of the center. And so tonight we're going to look at what it means, and then tomorrow night we're going to actually ask more questions about how we can be inclusive in our communities, what kind of language we use from the pulpit, what kind of language we use when we pray. And is it wrapping folks up into a sense of belonging, or is it sending folks away because they don't feel seen or heard? And I'm going to show some art throughout the session and not really talk about it, but just give you an opportunity to see some work by trans and non-binary folks. And as Sheila was saying, as we open, that there's something about gender and sexuality that makes it really challenging for some people to fully accept those of us who identify how we identify. And there was a recent study that showed that, in fact, if someone who is lesbian, gay, trans, non-binary, if they had one accepting adult in their life, not even a parent, just one person, say the music director or a teacher or a neighbor or a relative, that they have a 40% less, folks who have one accepting adult are 40% less likely to attempt suicide, just by having one person who sees them, recognizes them in their gender identity, and is supportive of them, calls them by the proper pronouns. And so it's not very easy, it's not very hard to make a difference in people's lives. And so as we move through tonight, we'll see how we can do that. Gender non-binary defined is that it's a spectrum of identities that are not exclusively masculine or feminine, and that are outside the gender binary, and that being male and female. Some folks will identify as not having a gender, and some folks will identify as a combination of genders, and some folks will wake up one day feeling female and wake up feeling more male the next day. And so this umbrella shows a visual of sort of what the binary would be for transgender folks, which would be as a trans man or a trans woman. And then in the non-binary expression of gender, there's all these other options. But it does, non-binary does fall under the umbrella of transgender, which just means that the sex you were assigned with at birth doesn't match your gender identity. And just to mix things up, there are quite a few non-binary people who don't identify as transgender. So in this case, it can be sort of like the more we know, the less we know, because everyone is individual, and it's going to be important that we get to know folks where they're at and how they identify, and not just sort of read some terms on the website or in this webinar and think that we know everything, because we won't really know until we ask. If you go on Facebook, there's 76 different gender identities that you can choose from. And this is pulled from the Facebook list, and it's identities that people may claim in a way that describes who they are as non-binary. This is one of my favorite artists out on Instagram. I recommend you finding folks who are trans and non-binary to follow on Facebook or Instagram, and just get more exposure to what the world is like. For me, my story is that when I was about 4, we had this small tree in my backyard, and I would go and climb and I would sit in the tree, and I would think, what am I gonna do? I am not a girl. And I wasn't like, I'm a boy. I was just like, I'm not a girl. I don't know. What am I gonna do? I have no idea what I'm gonna do here. These people don't seem to get me, my parents. And and so it's just been an ongoing, like, I came out of the womb with no hair, and my parents taped a bow to my head for years. It was before those elastic bands were even invented. And there was a lot of enforcement of what kind of girl I was, a girl, and I should be a certain kind of a girl. And it was really confusing, very confusing for me. And over time, I was like, oh, I get it. I'm gay. I'm a lesbian. I'm a dyke. And then it became I'm queer. And then it kept just kind of shifting and evolving for me, but with a lot of mismatch of who I was supposed to be, how I was presenting, how people saw me. And eventually I was really coming into understanding it as the youth were really shifting our conversation about gender, and there was a lot of tension around gender. The younger set started kind of showing me the way, and it was a couple years into ministerial school. I was at an all-campus retreat with ministerial students from all the campuses all around the country. And we were at a sort of the opening night of the retreat, and we were doing this thing where we were circling up together, and they would call something out and we would go into the center and be recognized. And it was like, do you like Emerson or do you like Thoreau? do you like this or do you, and it was very binary. And they said, all the women get in the center and we're gonna raise our hands and we're gonna love you and accept you. And so all the women went and stood in the center and the men circled and they held their hands up and they said, we see you, we love you, we know who you are. And then all the women went back and they said, okay, now all the men. And all the men went forward and stood in a circle. And they held up their hands and they said, we see you, we love you, we know who you are. And then I was with one of my besties from ministerial school, Reverend Cassandra Ray. And she said to me, I see you, I love you, I know who you are. And I was weeping and I thought, I have to come out. I can't just stand here. And it reached the point where physically I couldn't go by something that people, I could no longer be female. I couldn't stand up in front of people and be recognized for it. So I could no longer do it. And so the facilitator started to move to the next question. And I raised my hand and I said, wait, I don't identify as either, and I would like to be recognized. And it was about 80 people, about 70 of them I had never met before. And there I was standing in the middle with all these people surrounding me, holding their hands up, recognizing me because they saw the God in me. And yet there was a lot of confusion and a lot of not understand. What does that mean? I don't even know what that means. And then the diversity, it became one of the questions of the diversity class, which is one of the requirements of ministerial school. What is this thing? But what is this thing? And so this is what it is. This is what it is. And I know that we see the God in each other. And sometimes we don't see in a way that creates belonging. Sometimes we see with fear or limitation or misunderstanding. And so I would like us to get grounded in what it means so that we can truly be those open and inclusive communities. And for me, my gender is a little bit like God. Once you put it into words, you've diminished it. You've tried to wrestle it into a language that can't even really describe all that it is. And I considered whether or not I would say that out loud. It's not blasphemy. It is that it is just bigger than words for me. And does feel diminished by calling it and claiming it. So one of the things that I think is confusing, it's been confusing for me, and I know confusing for other people, is like, what is the difference between sex and gender? And then when you toss in sexuality, what is all of that? So I thought we could begin the discussion tonight about what those things are, how they interrelate, and sort of create silos. I mean, they're all one in us, right? But we can kind of put them into silos so that we can understand how they interrelate and how they don't relate. So we have sex, sexuality, and gender. Sex is male, female, and intersex. 1 to 2% of the population in the US is born intersex. And this is a category that's been constructed to reflect biological variation in our reproductive organs and our genitals. This is really interesting. If you know someone who's intersex, it can be really challenging. Often babies are operated on to become normalized, which creates a lot of issues in their lives. Can create, often does create. Sometimes it's not known that folks are intersex until they reach puberty. And, you know, we can't go into all of it tonight, but definitely if you're curious about anything that comes up tonight, Google is your friend. I know in the state of California, they've made surgeries on infants illegal. So you can't do if the reproductive organs aren't clearly one or, you know, in the binary, the forced surgeries are now against the law. And when it comes to our sexuality, well, our sex is biological, it's complex, and actually does happen on a spectrum. And then our sexuality, this is about who we sleep with, who we love, and it's about our capacity to give and receive pleasure in the body. And then our gender is a social construct, and gender varies from society to society, from culture to culture. If you just look at the place of women across the globe, you see really different representations and clothing and customs and expectations. And gender it does often come with expectation. And this expectation is in every aspect of our lives, including our spiritual communities, our family, our culture, our schools, the media, in movies, in film, TV. And so when it comes to gender, we have the buckets of transgender, cisgender, and non-binary. And I think folks know that when you're cisgender, that means that the sex you were assigned at birth matches how you identify. So I'm going to bounce out of this PowerPoint and see how folks are doing. Are you with me? Things are making sense? Do you have anything, Z, that you want to add?
I like Sheila noted that the term intersex replaced the word hermaphrodite, which is now considered to be a slur, because that might be a term people have heard.
Mm-hmm.
So no, I don't think I have anything to add right now at this point. Thank you, Champion. You're doing great.
We do have a question, I think. I believe that
demisexual. What does demisexual mean?
Okay.
That means that you sleep with people who you are emotionally attracted to, and it's not based on gender. And it's actually quite a bit about the intellect. Like you're erotically attracted to folks like after conversation or because of conversation. So, and we have a request to see the slide again. Also, these slides, I can make the slides available.
What is pansexual?
Pansexual, similar to demisexual, it means that you are attracted to folks, and it doesn't matter their gender, and it doesn't matter their sexuality. So Janelle Monáe came out as pansexual. It's sort of like my girlfriend had to start identifying as pansexual because she used to identify as bisexual, but then because I wasn't in the binary, then it's just broadens it. And it often relates to being with folks who identify as queer.
And I do know that there are people now who identify as bisexual, even though they are attracted to outside the binary as well. So it's one of those things where, again, just sort of like, what are your pronouns? Sometimes you have to find out what a term actually means to someone, because it can, bisexual, for example, can mean different things to different people.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
So what does queer or genderqueer mean today?
Queer is a term that's used. It is used because it applies to the non-binary, and it's used because it's more inclusive. It would include everybody in the LGBT umbrella. Do you want to say anything more about the queer title, Sheila?
Well, queer is, I'm right in the generation that's kind of like in both camps, because there's some folks who come from a generation who queer was not okay. It was used in a extremely derogatory manner. They just are like not gonna get with that word. And so you're more often to see younger folks embrace, younger than me. It's like older than me, nah, younger than me, yeah. And I'm kind of like right in the middle of that, because the younger generation doesn't have that same kind of association with it, and they can embrace it, especially because when they looked at the alphabet soup of LGBTQ, like, I'm just gonna say queer. So again, certain words mean different things to different people.
Can I add something to that? This is Sunshine.
Yeah, Sunshine.
And that is, you know, the term queer is also, and it's used nowadays as an empowerment. Back in the day, we know that during the Holocaust, gay people were given the pink triangle, and the women at the time were given the black triangle, and the gay community took those symbols that were derogatory or slurs or meant or pejorative or meant to put us down. They took those symbols and actually used them as empowerment and actually put them forward. Queer is a term like that like Z is saying, that in the past was used to put gay people down, or the alphabet soup down, if you will, but that is now a word that is being taken back and used in a power, as a power position and a power role to really be an umbrella to the community. And it even is so large to include LGBTQI allies. So if you're an ally, you can be considered queer because it's out of what was considered the norm once upon a time.
Thank you. Yeah, that's really great. So, queer allies. Okay, so we're going to dive back into some more content. We are going to do a longer breakout session in a few minutes, so stay tuned for that. When I was a kid, I had a really hard time picking my box for gender. If it said female, male, I could figure it out. But whenever it just said MF, I had this weird dyslexia, and I would often select the M box. This is a really great artist on Instagram, Brichida. They make really great art around their binaryness. So many of you are probably familiar with the gender unicorn, which is created by a trans student organization by Landon Pan and Anna Moore. And it's been in use for a while. You can see at the top gender identity with a rainbow in this thought bubble. So our identity is how we think of ourselves. Again, it's sort of in our consciousness. It's in our mind, and I think a lot about my gender as consciousness. And so non-binary is a gender identity. And gender expression, you see this dotted green line that is sort of a parenthesis to the unicorn. And that's how we look. That's how we dress. That's how we do our hair. That's if we use makeup or not. That's if we wear Doc Martens with our dresses. You know, it's how we express ourselves. So when we express, I would express on a masculine side. Other folks like me might express on a more feminine side, or sometimes people will just be very balanced in how they present their gender through their fashion and look. Sex assigned at birth, you see the little DNA helix in the genitalia area of the unicorn. That would be female, male, or intersex. The heart is who we're physically attracted to. So that can be our sexuality. And then who we're emotionally attracted to is who we hang out with, who we call when we've got a heartache. So again, you may want to spend more time with this. I know being non-binary, it's taken me a while to ground in all of what this means. But I love I love Landon Pan and Anna Moore for creating this. So another way to look at the aspects of our gender is that it's made up of our gender expression. Again, that's how we dress, if we wear makeup or not, how we do our hair, our gender identity. And these are sort of individual. These are who we are, who you are, who I am. And I think it's as we explore what it means to be non-binary, I think it's a good opportunity to explore what it means to be in the binary. And if we look at gender roles and gender relations meaning how men and women relate, how men, women, and non-binary folks relate, how do trans men and trans women relate, how do we all relate to each other in this societal way. And again, all of this is going to vary across culture and throughout history, that we will change and evolve. One of the common myths of the gender non-binary experience is that it's brand new. And in fact, it is not brand new. It exists across culture. Without a doubt, it exists across indigenous cultures across the world. And Sometimes I wonder if I could be returned to my indigeneity in an earth-based religion, say in Scotland or in Ireland, that how would I be expressing, how would I be accepted in my identity? Often people who exist in between or outside of a binary are seen as bridges and are seen as healers. And so I'm holding myself up as a healer, not just because of my gender expression and gender identity, but just because of who I am. So we have a couple minutes for questions right now. And then we're going to hear from Z a little bit.
I have a comment, not a question.
Great, Sheila.
So I identify as a lesbian. I'm old school, if you will. When I talk to young queer women, I often ask, why you chose queer versus lesbian, because I know a lot of lesbians feel like we're becoming erased, if you will, by young women choosing to be queer. So the young woman said to me, well, I said, are you attracted to women? She said, yes, and doesn't that mean you're a lesbian? And she said, well, yes, but I'm also maybe attracted to men also. I said, okay, so doesn't that make you bisexual? And she said, no, well, I also may be attracted to transgender men, transgender women, pansexual, gender fluid. It's whoever I'm attracted to. So I said, okay, now I get it. It's beyond just the binary, right? Just being attracted to men or women or both. And so that is when the light bulb moment went off and I could understand it. But I will say that I have seen a lot of young women sort of rebranding themselves as lesbians, sort of bringing back the L word. So I'm quite proud of that as well. So I just want you to know that was my aha moment. I felt some kind of way when people could no longer identify with the letter that I use. But, I had to be expansive and open up to the younger generation. I'm really proud of them, actually, for just taking it and running with it. So many people put millennials down. I will say this, millennials have, first of all, if you have a computer challenge, that's who you're going to call first as a millennial. So don't put millennials down. And I'm proud of them for taking the letters and expanding them. I really appreciate the fact that they honor their history, but they're also making history.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too that there can be tension. Some of my biggest critics were my old lesbian friends.
I'm so sorry.
I had a friend come from Canada to visit me, and she was like, she just felt abandoned, I think. And she was like, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? Isn't it good enough to just be a lesbian? And I had to just say, what if I knew what I was doing? And what if I was making the right choices for myself? And what if this suits me? And what if there's room for both of us? And no one has to be made wrong.
I have a question.
Great. Is that Penelope?
Yes.
Hi.
And I'm gonna, please don't take this, I'm gonna try my best not to sound offensive.
I appreciate that.
But I'm really trying to understand, because I'm having I really don't understand. I had a conversation because I knew I wanted to understand the the gay community. And I knew I was going to come to this meeting. So I talked to a friend the other day, and they were saying that, you know, homosexuality is just a form of insanity. And then they would just talk about all the different letters. And now with all of this demisexual and pansexual and gender, and I really don't know how to explain. I really don't know how to explain that it's not a mental condition, that it is physiological. So I'm just really trying my best to ask the right question in the right way and not sound like a horrible person.
No, I think that you're not a horrible person, and that I appreciate you being vulnerable to ask that question. And we need to be able to be vulnerable and to ask questions so that we can understand. I mean, I don't understand calling it a mental condition. I think that's lack of exposure and maybe fear. I know it's been a long time since it was considered a syndrome or something that needed to be healed from. Although there are certain parts of the country where it's still believed, and I think wrongly, and I think through wrong use of religion, that it's made wrong, you know. And
that's where I live. I live in part of the country.
Yeah, and I think that's control. I mean, that if you look at but if you look at patriarchy and you look at what supports patriarchy and what supports status quo culture, it makes sense that anybody existing outside of supporting the status quo is attacked or feared or misunderstood. And does Sheila, do you want to say anything about this? I mean, I think Sheila is the head of LGBTQ plus issues for the mayor of Washington, D.C. So she's got it all. She knows everything.
I think that's a high bar you set there. I will say that, you know, you captured it really well, Champion. You said it really well. Sometimes I don't have as much patience, but it really comes from fear, misunderstanding. And first of all, Ms. Penelope, you don't have to be the one to educate the world. You don't have to go out there. I know I appreciate you. I'm going to label you an ally, which is what you're saying. What do I say to these people? But you know, you really have to learn where and when to use your energy. And sometimes I choose not to use my energy if I'm surrounded by ignorance. I don't think it's my job to try to tell somebody they're wrong and I'm right. You know, that's not the point. When you get in those types of conversations, everybody loses. So what I would just say to somebody like that, let's just agree to disagree. Because I know God made these people. These people are God. They are here as God. You are here as God. I am accepting you as God, and I am urging you to accept them as God. But don't put too much energy into that. And don't feel that it's your job to educate people. Sometimes people are vested, heavily vested in their ignorance. They're not trying to be educated. They're not trying to move away from it. And I spent a long time beating my head against that wall. And I learned the hard way with, that it's not worth your time and energy and effort. Surround yourself with sort of like positive energy. And if people are fearful, or for somebody to say that it's a psychological issue, I'm not even sure if it's a physiological issue. It's a heart and mind issue, heart, mind, and soul issue. And who are you to question somebody else's heart, mind, and soul? So that's what I say. Don't put a lot of energy into that, but know that we are all here as God, and that that should let you know that we are all well in His image. We are all well, and yeah, don't take that on. Don't take that on. Just say, let's agree to disagree. And if you get some slides from Champion later, want to share them with them, that's another way to do it. But don't put a lot of time and energy into that. I appreciate you speaking up. It's really brave and courageous that you want to understand so you can go back and explain it. Sometimes these things are, first of all, like Champion said, it's been years in the making that they are here. And they are living their life. I've only been doing this job in the mayor's office for 5 years, and I use the wrong pronouns all the time, particularly if I know somebody transitioned from one gender to the other. So I would say that it's an ongoing process. These are all new terms, although not new to some, but new to most of us. And it's a work in progress. So don't beat yourself up for not knowing everything. Nobody knows everything. We're all about, and I don't ask for people to tolerate. I don't even use that word. I'm asking you to respect me. And that's all I got to say about that. So if you don't like what I saw a billboard somewhere, and it said, if you don't like gay marriage, don't get gay married. I love it. So if you don't like trans and non-binary, don't be trans and non-binary. I'm gonna stop talking now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we're gonna take a question. I'm a little concerned about, we're right on schedule, which is so exciting. But why don't we just mix it up? How about Rev Tammy? Did you have a question?
I had maybe more of a comment. The interesting thing for me about this whole discussion and about the ability to choose your pronouns and your words that describe who you are and how you express in the world and how you feel on the inside is so important. And I didn't get this, and I'm married to a person who's non-binary. I have had a long time of trying to wrap my head around the pronoun they, simply because the grade school grammar police in the back of my head kept saying, no, they is plural. And I wasn't wrapping my head around the idea of, well, you know what, there is kind of a plurality. That's what non-binary means to me in a lot of ways. There's a plurality of how my spouse expresses in the world. So I can choose to figure it out so that I can be more honoring to that. And I know that this is important because for me, when I have been labeled as being lesbian, that never felt right to me. And the reason why I'm labeled as lesbian is because I'm married to somebody who is other than a man. And so that automatically makes me a lesbian, but it doesn't make me a lesbian. Well, then, okay, then maybe I'm bisexual, but that didn't feel right either. And so, you know, I had my own journey of trying to figure out where I fit in the whole spectrum of the variety of words that showed up. And then my daughter educated me on the word pansexual. And suddenly It's like, oh, yeah,
Mhm.
that makes sense for me, because I don't feel like gender is a thing for me,
Mhm.
like it is for some other people. That's always been something that I have thought was odd in other people. I didn't understand it in other people because that wasn't a part of who I was. So for me, when I look at the word non-binary, now it makes so much sense that as a pansexual cisgendered woman, I am attracted to a person who's non-binary. That kind of fits me exactly. And so now, understanding that for myself, I understand the change in the use of pronouns and all that other stuff that goes along with it. I mean, it is all a learning curve. It's all a learning curve within myself. So I know it's all a learning curve for all of us. And so I'm excited that we're having this kind of conversation. And Penelope, I think that was a really great question, how you framed that and how you were really vulnerable in saying the question that may be on other people's minds. So that's all. I didn't really have a question, but thank you.
Thank you. Well, that's a perfect segue into what Reverend Z is going to lead us into next. I know we have some more questions that are still on the table, but we have a way to capture those going forward in a little bit. So, Rev Z, do you want to talk to us?
Sure. Yeah. So I appreciate when Champion said, I've been waiting for this movement for a long time, because I have been non-binary for a long time, but there weren't words, there weren't categories. I remember probably 30 years ago now, when I lived by myself for the first time, I was in my own energy of acknowledging, I don't feel like a man, I don't feel like a woman, I feel like yes, both, neither, but there wasn't language then. And so it took a long time. And I also remember watching a movie about someone who was AFAB is a term you'll hear sometimes, assigned female at birth, AFAB. There's also AMAB, assigned male at birth. So I'm an assigned female at birth person. And I remember seeing a movie about a trans man. So someone who's assigned female at birth who's saying, I'm not female, I'm male. And I remember watching this movie and going, because sometimes I wondered, right? I'm assigned female at birth. It's not a fit. Am I a trans man? And I watched this movie and saw, I just said, nope, that's not it either. So it's like I've been waiting. And the reason I changed my name to Z, just the letter Z, is it a boy? Is it a girl? Yes, no, both. Like Z for me it's a non-binary name, right? It doesn't belong to either gender. And I want to talk about the pronoun they too, because this gets a lot of questions, and Tammy referred to the grammar of it. And, I'll have a lot of people come up to me and say, I'd like to use that word they, but it's plural, right? And it's actually, so singular they, the pronoun singular they has been around for a long time. It's actually in the work of writers like Dickens, way back. They was used as a pronoun. And one of the times it went out of fashion is when they decided at one point, the grammarians, to start using he. Thank you, patriarchy. Start using he as the default pronoun, right? And one of the things when people ask me about this, I'll say, a lot of us are already using they, singular they, as a pronoun. So let's say you're walking down the street and you see $100 bill on the ground and you go, whoa, one person dropped $100 bill. I wonder if they realized they did that, right? We use singular they all the time. We use singular they to talk about someone we don't know what their gender is. What we non-binary folks are asking is, we want you to use that now when you do know who we are. And I appreciate too what Tammy said about the plurality of it too, because to me, that's yet another reason why it is perfect, because those of us who prefer they as a pronoun, there is a plurality there. The term I use to describe myself is gender rich. Whole lot of gender going on. And I know that for some people terms are limiting, but I find for me, having come upon that term, and it was actually my wife, Melissa, who, because I was using gender flexible for a while, and she goes, "You're not really flexible, it's just all there, all at once. It's gender rich, gender abundant." I like to think now, as a kid, I was gender pending. I didn't yet know. But now gender rich just like fits, you know. But I love they. And so just for those of you who are saying, but it's plural, watch yourself start to use that term in your life. Most people do. And it takes a while. The other thing I say, my pronoun now is she, I mean they. Because people are getting used to using that for me all the time. She, I mean they. And then they apologize, and it's like, no. As those of us presenting here are saying tonight, it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to ask questions. It's okay to not understand. It's beautiful. I really appreciate all the questions here tonight because of that. And I speaking for myself, I'm just so grateful how many of you are here tonight to talk about this and to learn. And it's not like I have it all figured out. It's not like Champion has it all figured out. We're still learning. And as Champion mentioned at one point, you know, we've been living in this reality our whole lives and we're still figuring it out. And we know that for some of y'all, it's like brand new. And you think you're supposed to have it all like now? Like, I don't think so. And who knows in 10 years, you know, what else is gonna have evolved and been expressed. So I just want to express my appreciation too for all of you here tonight.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we are becoming, and I think that to be transgender, whether you're in the binary or not in the binary, sets an example for all of us of becoming. We're always becoming more of who we are. And for me, this has been a beautiful experience of becoming. And you just want to celebrate that with folks. You know, you hear of this word gender dysphoria. Well, I'd like us to live into gender euphoria. How can we live into being euphoric about who we are and how we show up? So what we're going to do now is Rafe is going to set up some breakout rooms for us. And I'm going to show you how they're going to work by, some of you may be familiar with a Jamboard. It's a tool in Google Drive that allows us to go do collect from you live information that you'd like to share with us. So I have set up 20 Jamboards, and they will correspond to the breakout room that you're in. So if you get breakout room 1, you click on the Jamboard link and there you are in 1. If when your little bubble comes up, it says breakout room 8, you click through to 8. And there's 20 rooms because there's going to be 4 or 5 of you in a room. So
where do you find the Jamboard thing? Where is it?
It's not, I'm going to give it to you
It's
in
not
just
there.
a second. Because with adults, if you give them something, they go do it. You have to explain first. And then, so then you can use these tools over here. You can make your own Post-it notes. You can write using a text box. And you should this has been made so it's editable. So you should all have access to it. And I'm going to put it in the chat. And our beautiful tech person Rafe is setting up the breakout rooms for us.
Is
So
one person recording, is one person doing the writing in each breakout room or multiple people?
There's just going to be a few of you, so you can decide that amongst yourselves. I think it's good to have a recorder, but for me, I like, you might want to jump on there without, you can decide that amongst yourselves. And so you're going to have about, I guess we'll bring you back at 7:25. So you're going to have about 12 minutes for a rich discussion. And then we want to capture, the questions are, what did you hear? What are your reactions? And what questions do you have? Tomorrow night, we're doing session number 2 with Rev Tammy's person, Rev Steph will be here, and we're going to do what gender is God, and just have more conversation about how we can build inclusivity into our communities, answer more questions. There will be a lot more time for questions. So you're going to go to your, when Rafe's ready with the breakout
Yeah,
rooms.
I'm ready.
Okay, you're going to answer the questions. What did you hear? What are your reactions? And what questions do you have? So we'll see you in about 10 minutes.
Welcome back.
Were we supposed to have those sheets of questions and stuff? Because I didn't see anything like that in my breakout room.
Champion will have to address that because that's a new technology for me. So I don't have the information to answer that.
Mar, did you think to look for that thing to write it down? I didn't.
I can't,
Well-
yes, I did. I thought about it and I was looking everywhere and I didn't see it. So I just thought,
We
let's
didn't
talk.
see it either. We didn't see it.
So I'm going to put the link, the Jamboard link is at the bottom of the chat. If there's something that you didn't get to say, you could click this link before you leave. It'll open a browser and you can just toss your questions on there anywhere. Looks like some folks got right in there and used the Jamboard and some folks didn't, and that's all absolutely fine. I want to just thank everybody for your integrity, your openness, your receptivity. I want to thank again the Diversity Inclusion Commission, all the commissioners who are on tonight, especially Reverend Michelle Senegal, who has been so supportive of me. Thanks to Sheila and Rev Z. Tomorrow night, we have myself and Sheila and Rev Steph St. Amand. We're going to harvest the questions off the Jamboard and therefore create a conversation that addresses what some of what came up tonight. But as we close, I'm going to use this. I'm going to put some music on. Is everybody familiar with the Chatterfall? So what it is what we're going to do is we're going to put something that we're grateful for that happened tonight into the chat, but don't hit enter yet. And then when I say go, everyone will do it at once, and then there will be like a fall. So I'm going to put a little music on. The music is going to be our prayer out. And so everybody get something ready that you're grateful for. Is everybody ready? Give me a thumbs up if you're ready with a gratitude. Is everybody ready? Okay. Go! Ah. So I hope you can join us tomorrow night. This is great. This is so great. The gratitude. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye. I feel so full right now.
All right, Amber, go on, sing.
Queen Michelle, it's our song.
Yeah.
Good to see you again, Z.
Thank you to Red Sunshine.